Growing old is not always as dignified as it is portrayed. Television, advertisements, and even some books tend to show old age as a stage of serenity, calm, and wisdom. And yes, there is a lot of that, but there's also another side, one that is rarely mentioned out loud. It has to do with uncomfortable changes, embarrassing situations, and realities that can be hard to accept. I want to make something clear from the start. I am not talking about this to humiliate or ridicule anyone. I'm talking about it because it is true, and because all of us, sooner or later, will have to face it. Old age arrives with wrinkles, with experience, with precious memories, but also with physical and emotional transformations that sometimes make us feel like strangers in our own body. Most people avoid touching on these topics. We prefer to keep quiet, to look the other way, as if by not naming them they would stop existing. But that is not realistic. And even worse, that silence isolates us and makes us feel like we are the only ones going through these things. It is not like that. What I am going to share with you today happens to many of us, even if no one admits it in public. In this video, I want to speak to you with total honesty about 12 unpleasant things that older adults often do or experience as they age. Some of these changes will seem curious to you, others may make you uncomfortable, and others you might already be going through. They are uncomfortable truths, yes, but they are also realities we share. And when we share them, they become less heavy, less shameful. The most important thing is that I am not going to stay stuck in the negative. At the end of this video, I want to offer you a positive reflection, how to accept these transformations, how to handle them with grace, and above all, how not to let them define us completely. Because growing old brings difficulties, but it also brings the chance to embrace life with more authenticity. Before we start, I would love to know about you. How old are you, and from where are you watching this video? Leave it in the comments. I want to read you. There is a topic that almost no one talks about, but that we all recognize when we notice it. The so-called old person smell. It is a harsh term, even cruel, but it reflects a reality that many older adults face in silence. It is not a myth, nor an exaggeration. It is a real phenomenon that appears with age, and that can be very uncomfortable both for the person who has it and for those around them. From a physiological point of view, this smell has a simple explanation. As we grow older, our skin produces more of a substance called non-enal. This compound builds up on the surface of the skin and creates a particular aroma, different from the sweat of a younger adult or from the usual body odor. It is not that the person does not bathe or does not take care of themselves. It is a natural process of aging. Dry skin, hormonal changes, and a decrease in cell renewal also intensify that smell. I remember the story of a friend who visited his grandmother every Sunday. He told me that as soon as he walked into her room, he was surrounded by a particular smell, a mixture of stored clothes, dry skin, and medication. For him, it was not unpleasant, but rather a familiar sign of his grandmother's presence. But he confessed to me that when he invited friends to visit her, he felt uncomfortable because he noticed that they perceived it in a different way. This shows that beyond the physiological aspect, the smell can affect how others see us and how we feel about ourselves. I've also heard older people tell, with shame, that after a hug, someone hinted that their clothes smelled stale. Those comments are hurtful. Their self-esteem is shaken, and as a result, some older adults prefer to isolate themselves, reduce visits, or avoid family gatherings. It is not because they do not want company, but because they are afraid of being judged for something that is beyond their control. The problem is not only in the skin. Clothes that stay stored for a long time, closed wardrobes, and a lack of ventilation in the rooms intensify this aroma. Sometimes it is not enough to shower every day. The environment, the humidity, and even the furniture accumulate smells that permeate everything. What can be done? It is not about eliminating the problem completely, because to a large extent it is natural. But there are simple measures that help. Letting fresh air into the rooms every day, washing clothes frequently and not leaving them stored for too long, moisturizing the skin with neutral creams, and drinking enough water to avoid dryness are small steps that make a big difference. Gentle soaps, suitable deodorants, and regularly changing the bed sheets also help maintain a feeling of freshness. However, the most important thing is changing how we look at it. Understanding that this smell is not a sign of neglect or poor hygiene, but of a body that has lived for many decades. A body that carries stories, memories, and struggles. If we understand it this way, we can stop feeling ashamed and start seeing it with compassion. Because in the end, we are all heading in the same direction. Saliva and speech. Speaking, something so natural in youth, can become a challenge as we grow older. Many older adults discover almost suddenly that their mouth no longer responds in the same way. Sometimes there is too much saliva, other times there is not enough. Both situations create discomfort and, above all, affect the way we communicate with others. Excess saliva is often related to swallowing problems or to certain medications that alter the mouth's natural balance. This can make the voice sound wet, create little noises while speaking, or, in more complicated situations, make the person feel they must swallow constantly. On the other hand, a lack of saliva, known as dry mouth, can make words come out choppy, make the tongue feel rough, and even cause pain when trying to pronounce long sentences. On top of this, there are dental problems and dentures. Poorly fitted dentures change the way the tongue moves inside the mouth, which causes whistling, hissing, or unclear pronunciation. Many older adults have told me how embarrassed they feel when their grandchildren laugh at the way they say certain words. It is not malicious teasing, it is the innocence of a child. But it still hurts. I remember the case of Carmen, a 79-year-old woman who had always been the life of family gatherings. She loved telling stories, singing, and even reciting poems. But when she started having problems with saliva and her dentures, her voice changed. She confessed to me that during meals, she preferred to stay silent so that nobody would notice that she sometimes had to stop to wipe the corners of her lips, or that she struggled to finish a sentence without choking. She went from being the most talkative to becoming a quiet presence. What hurt her the most was not the physical discomfort, but the fear that her loved ones would think she no longer had anything interesting to say. These situations are repeated in many families. A dinner that should be a happy moment can become a source of anxiety for someone who fears that a saliva problem, an unexpected noise, or a difficulty chewing will become the center of attention. It is not uncommon for some older adults to decide to avoid these gatherings and, little by little, isolate themselves. The good news is that there are ways to manage it. Proper dental checkups and well-adjusted dentures make a big difference. Drinking water often, using special rinses for dry mouth, or practicing simple tongue and jaw exercises help restore confidence when speaking. It is also essential that the family be patient, listen carefully, and avoid interrupting with jokes that, even if they seem harmless, can hurt. Speaking is much more than transmitting words. It is sharing life, memories, and emotions. And when saliva or teeth get in the way of that process, what is needed is not teasing or impatience, but support and understanding. Because behind every broken word, behind every sentence spoken with effort, there are decades of experiences that deserve to be heard. Gas and digestion. Talking about gas is uncomfortable, but necessary. With age, the digestive system changes, and what used to go unnoticed begins to show up more clearly. Frequent flatulence, unexpected burps, and slower digestion become part of daily life for many older adults. From a medical standpoint, the explanation is clear. Over the years, the muscles of the digestive tract lose strength and coordination. Intestinal transit becomes slower, which leads to gas buildup. In addition, the production of digestive enzymes decreases, making it harder to digest certain foods such as legumes, dairy products, or even some fruits. If we add medications that irritate or alter the stomach, it is natural that burping and flatulence become more common. The hardest part is not so much the physical aspect, but the social one. At a family gathering, in the middle of a conversation, or even at the table, an unexpected sound can become a reason for laughter. For some, it is just a funny anecdote, but for the older person, it is often a source of shame. I remember Mr. Manuel, an 81-year-old man who told me how he had stopped going to domino games with his friends. It was not because he no longer liked playing, but because every time he leaned forward to pick up the tiles, he feared that a gas would escape and ruin the moment. The situation becomes even more complicated when the gas is accompanied by a bad smell. No one wants to talk about this, but it is part of reality. And that fear of being judged pushes many people to isolate themselves, to prefer solitude rather than risk having a bad moment in front of others. It is important to understand something. This is not a lack of manners or a lack of respect. We are not talking about people who have forgotten their etiquette, but about a body that has changed. The control that once seemed automatic is now harder to maintain. Pointing it out, making fun or criticizing only increases the shame and sadness of the person living with it. What can be done? There are small adjustments that help. Reducing the intake of foods that cause gas, such as fizzy drinks, certain vegetables, and fried foods, adding daily walks to support digestion, drinking enough water, and when necessary, consulting a doctor to check for lactose intolerance or another specific issue. Even simple techniques, such as eating slowly and chewing well, significantly reduce the buildup of air. The key is that family and friends understand that these changes are part of the natural aging process. Understanding and empathy turn what could be a cause of shame into a minor detail. In the end, we all have a body, and all of us, without exception, will face these transformations. Noises while breathing or sleeping. One of the most common and, at the same time, most uncomfortable transformations of old age are changes in breathing. Many older people begin to snore more loudly, to gasp even while at rest, or to have heavy breathing that draws the attention of those around them. Snoring, although it is often the butt of jokes, has a simple explanation. The muscles of the throat and tongue relax more than normal with age, narrowing the passage of air. This causes vibrations that turn into those nighttime sounds. In some cases, sleep apnea also appears, where breathing stops for a few seconds, causing gasps or pauses that scare the person sleeping next to them. I remember Rose, a 76-year-old woman who shared a room with her granddaughter during vacations. She told me, half laughing and half embarrassed, that the little girl would look at her in fear in the middle of the night because suddenly she would stop, hearing her breathe, and then a loud gasp would follow. What for the granddaughter was a reason for alarm was, for Rose, a reminder that her body no longer worked as it used to. Heavy breathing does not happen only during sleep. Many people feel that when they climb a few stairs, walk a short distance, or even when they just sit quietly, their breathing sounds louder. It is not that they are always sick, it is that the lungs, muscles, and heart work differently as the years go by. The airways become less elastic, the diaphragm loses strength, and the noises become more noticeable. In daily life, this can create tension. Couples who used to share a bed now sleep in separate rooms because of snoring. Families who worry excessively about nighttime sounds. People who feel embarrassed to fall asleep in public, for example on a bus or a plane, for fear that others will look at them or laugh. The key is understanding that these changes are not negligence or bad habits, but a natural consequence of aging. That does not mean nothing can be improved. There are treatments for sleep apnea, breathing exercises that strengthen the diaphragm, and even posture changes while sleeping that reduce snoring. Staying properly hydrated and avoiding alcohol also helps. In the end, noisy breathing reminds us that we are still here, still alive, and although it can be uncomfortable, it is also a testimony of endurance. Understanding and accepting it with humor and patience makes this stage easier to live. Loss of control over bladder and bowels. Talking about incontinence is perhaps one of the most delicate topics. Very few people dare to admit it, but millions of older adults live with it every day. Losing control over the bladder or bowels is not only a physical challenge, it is also a hard blow to dignity and self-confidence. With age, the muscles that control urine and stool weaken. In addition, illnesses such as diabetes, neurological problems, or side effects of certain medications increase the chances of having leaks. In women, childbirth and hormonal changes also play an important role. The so-called accidents usually happen at the worst possible times, during a walk, on a family visit, at a social gathering. What may seem like a small incident to others is, for the person living it, A devastating experience. The fear that it will happen again creates anxiety, and that anxiety, in turn, makes the problem worse. I know the story of Anthony, an 80-year-old man who loved going out to play cards with his neighborhood friends. But after a couple of incontinence episodes, he decided to stop going. He did not want to tell anyone what was happening. He simply said he was tired. The truth was that he could not bear the idea of going through that humiliation again. Many people turn to adult diapers. They are a huge help, but they also create mixed feelings. On one hand, they provide security. On the other, they make the person feel infantilized, as if they had gone backwards in time. Putting on a diaper at 70 or 80 years old is not easy to accept. The most important thing is to understand that incontinence does not define a person. It does not erase their achievements, their wisdom, or their worth. It is a physical change, not a loss of dignity. There are medical treatments, pelvic floor strengthening exercises, adapted diets, and routines that greatly improve the situation. But beyond the physical, emotional support and understanding are needed. When an older person confesses, with shame, that they have had an accident, the best response is not reproach or mockery, but empathy. Because behind that uncomfortable moment, there is a human being who has lived decades of effort and deserves to be treated with respect. Incontinence reminds us that the body ages, but it also teaches us to cultivate patience, compassion, and humility. And although it is often lived in silence, talking about it honestly can lighten the burden and help people feel they are not alone in this experience. The skin and its uncomfortable changes. The skin is one of the most visible mirrors of the passage of time. What used to be firm, smooth, and even begins to change with the years. Dark spots appear on the hands and face, sagging becomes obvious on the arms and neck, itching becomes a frequent companion, and wounds take much longer to heal than before. These changes are not superficial. The skin loses collagen and elasticity, blood vessels become more fragile, and the production of natural oils decreases. All of this makes the surface of our body look thinner, drier, and more vulnerable. A simple bump that once left a light mark can now turn into a bruise that takes weeks to disappear. The hardest part, however, is the emotional impact. I remember Teresa, an 83-year-old woman who once confessed to me that she had stopped looking at herself in the mirror. She said, "I no longer recognize the woman I once was. I feel like my skin tells me every day that I am fading away." It was not vanity. It was pain over the distance between the image she had of herself and the one she saw reflected. That discomfort is often experienced in silence. Many older adults avoid going out, putting on makeup, or even getting ready because they think there is no point. Sagging skin on the arms makes some refuse to wear sleeveless clothing. Spots on the face make others avoid photos. And when constant itching arrives, along with wounds that open easily, the discomfort is double, both physical and emotional. But there is another way to look at the skin. Every wrinkle is a groove of lived experiences. Every spot is proof of years under the sun. Every scar is a reminder of battles overcome. The skin, with all its imperfections, is an open book that keeps our story. The problem is not the change itself, but the shame we feel in front of it. Caring for it is still important. Using moisturizing creams, drinking water, protecting ourselves from the sun, and maintaining a balanced diet all help keep it healthier. But the most necessary thing is learning to look at it with kindness, because that skin, even if it is no longer youthful, is the coat that has accompanied us our whole life. Changes in hearing and voice. Hearing and voice are two essential channels of communication, and with age, both begin to change in ways that can cause frustration. The ears tend to produce more earwax, which creates a feeling of blockage, buzzing, or even hearing loss. Also, the cells responsible for catching sounds deteriorate over the years, which makes voices sound quieter, conversations in noisy places almost impossible to follow, and music lose some of its nuances. This directly affects social life. Some older adults prefer to stay quiet rather than ask people to repeat themselves all the time. The voice also changes. The vocal cords weaken, and breathing no longer has the same strength. As a result, the voice becomes weaker, shaky, or hoarse. What used to be a firm, clear tone can now sound choppy or tired. I remember Julian, a man who in his youth had been a radio announcer. His voice was his pride, deep and vibrant, but after he turned 70, he began to feel that he ran out of air while speaking and that his tone faded. He told me, "It is as if there were no trace left of the man I once was." Losing that vocal identity was harder for him than any wrinkle. These changes complicate communication. A grandmother who repeats, "What did you say?" several times can drive the grandchildren crazy. A grandfather whose voice breaks in the middle of a story may feel that no one listens to him with interest anymore. And little by little, some decide not to speak, convinced that their words no longer carry the same weight. However, the answer is not silence. Modern hearing aids greatly improve hearing. Breathing and vocal exercises help keep the voice clearer and stronger, and most importantly, the family must be patient. Repeating a sentence kindly, listening carefully even if the voice is weak, valuing every word even if it comes with effort. Hearing and voice are more than physical functions, they are bridges to others. Even if they deteriorate, they remain paths that connect us, and when they are cared for with respect and love, they continue to transmit what matters most, the essence of who we are. Changes in the smell and taste of the mouth. One of the most uncomfortable changes of aging happens in the mouth. Breath, which in youth is rarely a constant problem, can become a daily concern with age. So-called chronic halitosis affects many older adults, and not always because they neglect their hygiene. The mouth ages just like the rest of the body. Saliva production decreases, which encourages dryness and the growth of bacteria. On top of that come dentures, which, if not cleaned properly, accumulate food debris and generate bad odors. Even medications have an inodontine influence because many of them dry out the mouth or alter the oral flora. I remember Dolores, a 78-year-old woman who confessed to me that she had stopped kissing her grandchildren on the cheek, not because she did not love them, but because she was afraid someone would notice her strong breath and comment on it. That fear took away one of the simplest and sweetest gestures in life. The problem is not limited to smell. The sense of taste also changes. What used to be a wonderfully aromatic cup of coffee can now seem flavorless or even bitter. Food loses nuances, and sometimes it even becomes unpleasant. This creates frustration because the pleasure of eating is also the pleasure of living. In intimate life, halitosis can become a silent wall. Couples who love each other deeply may avoid getting too close for fear of making the other uncomfortable. It is not always spoken, but it is felt. And in social life, many older adults choose to stay quiet or keep their distance, convinced that their mouth is betraying them. It does not have to be an inevitable fate. Brushing teeth and tongue regularly, cleaning dentures thoroughly, and using alcohol-free mouthwashes help a lot. Drinking water often, stimulating saliva production with fresh foods, and talking to the dentist about denture adjustments are simple and effective steps. Most importantly, we must remember that this problem does not define a person. Bad breath does not erase the tenderness of a hug or the wisdom of a word. Seeing it this way lessens the shame and restores some confidence, because the mouth, even with its changes, is still the bridge through which our stories, our laughter, and our "I love yous" emerge. Walking in an unsteady or uncoordinated way. Walking, something so simple and automatic in youth, can become a challenge in old age. Steps grow shorter, balance more fragile, coordination harder to maintain. What used to be a calm walk can now feel like crossing a field full of obstacles. The muscles in the legs lose strength, the joints wear down, and the eyes no longer offer the same safety when judging distances. On top of that come inner ear problems, which affect balance. The result is unsteady steps, frequent stumbles, and a constant fear of falling. I know the story of Ernest, an 85-year-old man who used to go out every morning to buy bread. One day, while crossing the street, he tripped on a curb and fell in front of everyone. He did not break any bones, but the shame was so great that he decided never to go out alone again. From then on, he depended on his daughter even for the simplest shopping. It was not the fall that paralyzed him, but the humiliation of feeling fragile in front of others. Stumbles and falls are often interpreted by those watching as a sign of weakness. Neighbors who offer help, family members insisting he use a cane, strangers who look at him with pity. Even if their intentions are good, they can make the older person feel less capable, less independent. However, there are ways to maintain stability and regain some confidence. Leg strengthening exercises, such as walking short distances regularly, practicing balance with support, or doing daily stretches, are very helpful. Wearing proper shoes, avoiding loose rugs, and keeping the house well lit reduce risks. And in some cases, using a cane or a walker is not a sign of weakness, but of wisdom. It is better to prevent a fall than to regret it. Walking unsteadily does not mean losing dignity. It means that the body is acknowledging its age and accepting that fragility, without letting it defeat us, is one of the greatest lessons of old age. Because even if the steps are slower, every step is still a victory forward. Repeating stories or forgetting details. One of the most frequent signs of aging is a change in memory. It is not necessarily an illness like Alzheimer's, but small, everyday forgetfulness that, although common, causes discomfort. Forgetting where the keys were left, losing the thread of a conversation, or repeating the same story several times at a family gathering are typical situations in older adults. What may be a reason for laughter for others is, for the person living it, a painful reminder that their mind is no longer the same. I remember Pilar, an 81-year-old grandmother who loved telling stories from her youth. At every birthday celebration, she enthusiastically recalled how she met her husband at a village party. At first, everyone listened with a smile, but over time they began to interrupt her with phrases like, "We already know," or "that again." Pilar confessed to me that after hearing those replies, she decided to talk less, even though inside she still felt the need to share her memories. Memory is a pillar of identity. When it begins to fail, the person feels like they are losing part of themselves. At the same time, the people around them can become impatient, as if those forgetful moments were intentional or an unnecessary nuisance. It is essential to understand that repeating stories is not a whim, but a way of keeping the connection with memories alive. And forgetting details is not a lack of interest, but a natural consequence of time. The response should not be mocking or harsh correction, but patience. Listening, even if the story has been heard 10 times, is an act of love. Memory becomes a difficult social issue because it places the older person in a vulnerable position. But when the family learns to accompany with empathy, forgetfulness stops being an obstacle and becomes an opportunity to remember together. Changes in hygiene habits. With age, tasks that once seemed simple, such as bathing, getting dressed, or combing one's hair, can become a challenge. Loss of strength, fear of slipping in the shower, joint pain, or simple fatigue all lead many older adults to reduce how often they take care of their personal hygiene. What for them is a way of adapting can become a source of discomfort for others. Body odor, unkempt hair, or stained clothes trigger immediate reactions in those around them. And although it is often a physical limitation, social judgment turns it into a sign of laziness or neglect. I know the case of Julio, a 77-year-old man who lived alone. His daughter noticed that he always wore the same shirt and avoided talking about his bathing routine. One day she discovered that Julio was not showering because he was afraid of falling in the tub. He had had a minor slip months earlier and did not want to risk it again. The problem was not the lack of hygiene itself, but the fear of his own fragility. This issue also comes up in care homes. Some residents resist being helped in the shower because they feel they are losing their privacy. They would rather skip bathing than expose their body to the eyes of strangers. Lack of hygiene does not only affect coexistence, it also affects health. Skin gets irritated, infections appear, and self-esteem deteriorates. But the solution is not scolding, it is understanding and support. Adapting the bathroom with safety bars, special chairs, handheld showers, and easy-to-use products can make a huge difference. Hygiene is not just about being clean, it is also about dignity. Helping an older adult maintain it is giving them the chance to feel respected, cared for, and still in charge of themselves. Frustration and bad temper. Growing old is not easy. The body hurts, memory fails, energy drops, and independence shrinks. All of this becomes fertile ground for frustration, and many times that frustration shows up as irritability, constant complaining, and a harsher character. It is not unusual to hear phrases like, "grandparents get grumpy," but behind that bad temper there is often fear, sadness, and a sense of loss. When someone who once was strong and active now depends on others even for simple tasks, it is understandable that they feel frustrated. Mary, an 86-year-old woman, had always been patient and cheerful. But after losing mobility, she began to complain about everything: the food, the television, the weather, her children. At first, her family thought she had become negative until they understood that what she really felt was helplessness. Complaining was her way of expressing a deep pain she did not know how to put into words. For relatives, these changes are hard to handle. Listening to reproaches or enduring an irritable character is exhausting. However, it is important to remember that many times it is not the person themselves, but the illness, the fatigue, or the hopelessness speaking through them. Bad temper in old age is, in many cases, a defense mechanism. It is a way for someone to try to regain control in a life where they are deciding less and less. The answer should not be confrontation or distance, but patience and affection. Instead of asking, "Why do you complain so much?" it may be more helpful to say, "I understand that this bothers you. How can I help you?" That small change in attitude can transform the relationship and lighten the weight of frustration. We have gone through 12 uncomfortable truths about aging. From body odors to loss of physical control, from forgetfulness to irritability. Realities that are not usually spoken aloud, but that shape the lives of millions of older people. The central message is simple. This is not about hiding these changes or being ashamed of them. It is about accepting them, understanding them, and finding ways to adapt. Every wrinkle, every scar, every limitation is a sign of a life lived. They are chapters in a long, unique, and valuable story. Growing old is not easy, but it's not a sentence either. With self-love, family support, and patience, these truths become lighter. By accepting them, we discover that old age also brings wisdom, authenticity, and a new way of valuing simple things. One day, we will all get there. And what will make the difference will not be hiding what is unpleasant, but facing it with dignity and compassion. Love and patience are the best answers. Now, I would love to know about you. How old are you, and from where are you watching this video? Tell me in the comments, and if this content has made you think, share it and subscribe so that more people can learn about these truths and we can learn together how to grow old with humanity.